This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about how Bitcoin won't be fine and Bitcoin will be fine. This is sort of riffing on the famous Samuel Beckett saying, "I can't go on, I'll go on." I've made a bunch of fairly depressing videos over the past week about Bitcoin Core removing the mask, about Bitcoin Core attacking Bitcoin, about Bitcoin Core going rogue. And I've been getting some responses like this one. Is mine and other holdings, Bitcoin holdings, now at risk? Will someone please explain this in simple terms so that people like me and others who don't understand can better understand what all this is about? My response, your Bitcoin is safe. The two things you can do which are best for both you and for the Bitcoin network right now is to hold your own private keys, i.e. get a good hardware wallet like the Cold Card or the Jade, and run a Bitcoin node as well. But holding your own private keys is still the most important thing to do. Also getting comments like this one from Bapeth or Bapeth maybe. You are causing FUD where there are not to be. If this is all people have to complain about Bitcoin in 2025, then we are in a very good spot. The people selling this poison nothing burger really aren't understanding the fundamentals here. This isn't a Bitcoin university today. At best, it's an ugly protest by uninformed radicals at the edge of the campus. Choose better gurus. It's quite ironic that he would phrase it that way if you understand what's going on. So I responded to him and he responded back. I appreciate the reply, but I have to say that when the dust settles, most will realize this has more to do with ego and reactionary behavior, certain individuals being banned from an online forum. He's obviously talking about Bitcoin mechanic than it does with the health of Bitcoin. There's enough strife in the world today, and if you choose opportune limits as the hill to die on while trying to push a new nerd war in Bitcoin, you will be remembered more like a Bcasher than a Bitcoiner. My response, being banned from an online forum is merely one small skirmish in a war that has been going on since at least February 2023. This itself is a continuation of a war that goes back to the Opportune Wars and even before. I don't think you've been paying attention or have thought through what it means to have gamified spam, which is really what many of these things are. Gamified spam combined with just a few actors doing block template construction. Tom in PDX responds, this is absolutely correct, and worst of all, encouraging people to stop donating to OpenSats and HRF. Also, Bitcoin Mechanic obviously has good intentions, but this is his second time causing a big ruckus over Bitcoin Core. I would actually reverse that order. I suggest people fully read up on any further disagreements he's involved in and amplifies before jumping to conclusions. Bapeth or Bapeth saying, yes, mechanic is irresponsibly dramatic. My response, that's what I thought about the spam debate at first too, but then I dug deeper. If you haven't done your homework, you're not going to get it, no matter how much you think you understand about Bitcoin. And then we have some people writing in things like this, like Kirliam, it pains me to say, but I've been selling my Bitcoin for gold and silver. Huge error. Not all of it. I will keep some, but I've seen some worrying things about Bitcoin. And then he has some worries here about the power outage in Spain. I mean, the power went out for 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it was, which was terrible. It's not good for people. No network, no Bitcoin network, no transactions. But again, you could have gone just over the border to a different country, or you could have just waited 24 hours to transact. I've tried buying things with Bitcoin, but it was too difficult. It has to be streamlined for the plebs. I would ask Hurlium if he's switching from Bitcoin to gold and silver. Has he tried buying things with gold and silver? That's a little bit difficult too, especially to do it online. So I think that's the wrong takeaway, to panic and sell your Bitcoin. Because if you're familiar with the history of Bitcoin is a lot like the history of humanity. It's one long, sad tale of crises, emergencies, bad blood, betrayals, schisms, and heresies, rage quits, long-held grudges and revenge, forks, and wars. And yet here we are, you and I haven't died yet, and somehow Bitcoin hasn't died yet either. And in fact, Bitcoin has grown to be a $2 trillion asset that continues to eat the world. We do have these twin and interrelated problems of mining pool centralization through block template centralization and also on-chain spam. But I think both are fixable by serious people who are paying attention, people like Bitcoin Mechanic and Luke Dasher and others who are working on this. Hodling can be quite the psychological journey, and I understand this. New Bitcoin plebs are beginning to understand now why so many people who had 5,000 Bitcoin in 2011 never got rich and now own less Bitcoin than most newcomers do. Hodling is really hard, and here in 2025, I think things could get so much worse from here before they get better. So if you're upset about Bitcoin right now, even as we're melting up, you're going to be very upset if the civil war intensifies. The spam crisis has been simmering for at least the last 2 years, and the questions about scaling and non-monetary data on chain have been present since the very beginning of Bitcoin. In many ways, I think this channel, Bitcoin University, now has two distinct audiences. So to those audiences, I will say slightly different things, and this is is a little weird, but to the newcomers, I will continue to say, ignore the FUD, ignore the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Just take your Bitcoin off the exchange, hodl and chill. Everything's going to be fine. I think that's early in your journey. That's the right way to approach these things and not get caught up in the drama. But to those who have been on this journey with me for a few years, and many of you have been, the message is we now have a serious crisis on our hands and things are going to get extremely chaotic and messy, I think. Bitcoin will not be fine unless you help, but paradoxically, Bitcoin will definitely be fine because I know there's so many good Bitcoiners out there who are going to help and are now being mobilized. There's this famous quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby. This quote is, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still function." And for this video, those two ideas would be Bitcoin is not going to be fine. Bitcoin is going to be fine. I think both are true. Here's what I think is going to happen. There's going to be another civil war in Bitcoin, as I said. And to be really, really clear, this is not something that I want to happen. This past week, as you can probably hear from my voice, has been exhausting and miserable. And I've been forced to neglect major parts of my personal life as this crisis has escalated. But I do think there's going to be another civil war in Bitcoin, and it's obviously already started. Some will rage quit and or sell their Bitcoin. Some will panic sell. Bitcoin will continue to move from weak hands to strong hands, thus strengthening the overall ecosystem. And we're going to see who the tourists are and who the people are who really want to live in this Bitcoin ecosystem and fight the fights that need to be fought. Bitcoin plebs who've been putting off running their own nodes will now do so in order to make their voices heard on the network, and this is already happening in a really big way. We're seeing Bitcoin knots skyrocket in the implementation charts. Bitcoin Core itself may choose to reform itself, or more likely it just becomes increasingly irrelevant as Bitcoiners migrate to other implementations like Bitcoin knots and hopefully other implementations as well. Bitcoiners might not sleep well over the next 6 to 24 months, but I think Bitcoin, as I said, will still be fine. It's probably also going to melt up in a big way, ironically, while we're all still fighting with each other due to spreading global adoption by institutional investors, corporations, and nation states. But if these become the main investors running the Bitcoin ecosystem, then we're in trouble. And this is why Bitcoin plebs need to run their own nodes and assert their will, especially when it comes to software updates like the one that Bitcoin Core has been trying to push on us. And as one of you said in the comments recently, Bitcoin's doing its honey badger don't care price action thing again, starting to move back up even in the face, as I said, of this emerging civil war. And now even retired Bitcoin OGs are actually, quote unquote, rising from the dead to help Bitcoin in its hour of need. We have NVK writing here, OGs coming out of the woods and mountains asking, WTF is going on with Core, with Bitcoin Core? The consensus seems to be most have serious issues with how the pull request, or also you might say how the PR is being handled, the public relations is being handled for such a sticky issue, because pull requests are ultimately a matter of PR as well. And this one was completely mishandled in a very, very arrogant way. There are people, OGs, it looks like Bitcoin Kami is one of them. I'm not going to say his name here. Bitcoin, and in his bio here, he says, Bitcoin Core have become so terrible, they forced me back to Twitter. Plebs assemble, lock shields, and march the scammers back to Ethereum. I think that's a nice framing. Run knots and datum, which is how you can mine on Ocean Mining. And then he has a very nice thread here about the Opportune debate, which we can go through on a different day, but also put it in the description notes below. I don't know what's been happening on Twitter either. I follow all these people, and when it comes time to make a video, it's been unfollowing me. This has been happening quite a bit, so be careful of that as well on X. So what can you do to help? Start running your own Bitcoin node. There are many resources, free resources available now. I made a really brief video last Sunday, which I'll put a link to in the description notes below, how to run your own Bitcoin node. And then BT Sessions did an excellent, much longer one, how to run a Bitcoin node using knots on desktop, laptop, Umbrel, or Start9. And Cole as well has a nice one about how to run Bitcoin knots on Start9 and replace Bitcoin Core without having to re-download the blockchain. And then if you want to retweet these resources and share them, I put them all together in one tweet, which I'll link to in the description notes below. If we take a look at how Bitcoin Knots is doing, it really is rising the ranks. It's now at almost 5.6% after having been at just 2% not too long ago. And the funny thing is Bitcoin Knots is now trading over the most recent version of Bitcoin Core. Bitcoin Knots now has more users. We can see how Bitcoin Core is being left in the dust as Knots continues to climb and people lose faith in Bitcoin Core. And to be clear, I hope that Bitcoin Core can somehow reform itself and we can figure out what's going on over there. But so far, it's a really, really bad look. A lot of questions about using Knots versus using Bitcoin Core. These are just different software implementations of the Bitcoin consensus rules. Brett of Velen here asking, if the Bitcoin node network switches over to knots, does that constitute a soft fork? Is that what that means? Faith no more in Bitcoin Core. And I write, no, fortunately, it's not a soft fork or a fork of any kind. There will still just be one network and one blockchain. So if you run Bitcoin knots, you don't have to worry that you are somehow forking the network by doing that. Bitcoin really needs to win this one because nothing out there even comes close. And when I cast shade on Bitcoin in various ways, you should know that it is still where I have all of my money except for my house. And this is still the only race that I'm betting on in this monetary race because nothing else out there comes even close. If something did, I would move to it. It's not Caspa, which is a joke. It's not Monero, which is a joke. It's not physical gold, which is a complete joke in the digital age due to its poor portability and divisibility. If central bankers want to stack it before they're going to be forced to move over to Bitcoin, they're welcome to waste their time doing that. I'm not moving to some other major crypto, some top 10 crypto like Ethereum. And we can see even Vitalik waking up and realizing that he's been on the wrong track for 10 years and that he should have been doing things much more like Bitcoin. Of course, he's saying this now that Ethereum is completely collapsed against Bitcoin. But Vitalik writes, one of the best things about Bitcoin is how simple it is. Yes, Vitalik, we've been trying to tell you that for years. The simplicity has lots of benefits. Let's bring those benefits to Ethereum. It's a little late to bring those to Ethereum because you already have these massive, complex smart contracts, which are part of a very wide attack surface. Vitalik's finally aware of this. He's saying we can reduce the attack surface and the social attack surface by moving to a more simple setup. But you can't really do this after you've had the 10 years of history that Ethereum has had with the pre-mine, the huge allocation to insiders, the rolling back the chain at the DAO hack, and just all of the joke that it's become with its centralized leadership and centralized roadmap. So unfortunately for the Ethereum guys, there's really no future here. Unfortunately for Bitcoin, a lot of these Ethereum refugees that are coming from this collapsed ecosystem are coming over to Bitcoin and trying to put spam on the blockchain. So that's part of our fight. As the rats abandon the ship, unfortunately, they're coming to the Bitcoin ship, but we're going to do our best to stop them. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.